Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Fuente and Meerapfel present Meet the Professor. Hello, world.
Well, I thought I had seen it all in my life, but definitely you did not take your medicine today. What the hell is happening? What did you drink last night? Or what are you smoking? Where the hell are you?
It's a good question. Today we're pre-recording this show, and it's a very special day. It's the day of Purim. So for all the Purim party people out there, happy holidays to all of you. Lots of love. And as for what I'm smoking, well, it can only be one or two cigars, Jose. And today, it's the short story. How are you?
Good. You know, I will be, thank God I went to this morning with my daughter to check myself. Pacemaker's working well. Eye doctor this afternoon, tomorrow just to check the lungs. But I've gotten a green light with everything. So Saturday, I fly to Miami, next day to Macedonia, and finally back home. A little bit of rest, and that's it. And you know, with this pacemaker, now there's a pool going on to seeing who am I going to outlive. So people said, definitely I'm outliving Carlito, I'm outliving Ernie. They put you in third place, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, listen, I'm going to have to call your doctor and tell him that you might not be fit for getting back on that plane to this part of the world. I can tell you that. Maybe he needs to keep you in the Dominican for another few months. Anyways, when you're fit to travel, you come and visit me here in Dubai, because this is a beautiful place. And you know how much they went in this part of the world.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We have Fares, Mr. Mojave, Petey. We have so many friends there that have been big supporters of Fuente and big supporters of families like yours and Carlitos and many others, people who know who we are referring to. We don't like to mention a lot of names, but people
No,
know.
you never mention anybody. Well, anyways, today being the pre-recording day, there's a very big announcement, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that it's the birthday of Liana Fuente.
Liana was yesterday.
Yeah, you get all the days mixed up. But anyways, happy birthday, Liana, in good health and happiness, many, many, many years. And may she be joining us very quickly and very swiftly.
Definitely. Liana, happy birthday. I sent you some messages yesterday. Take care of my socio, Manny. So we love you.
Happy birthday, Liana. All right. We got to get this show going. And I know there's a hell of a guest of honor coming on today. One that we're going to be having a lot of fun with. Somebody who might need to take his medicine once in a while, like Carlito and I. Jose, do us the honors.
Well, today we're going to have probably one of the most interesting, fascinating, creative guys in the industry, the one and only, my old-time friend, Mr. Fred Rewey. Fred, welcome.
Fred, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I thought for a second I was on the wrong show with that introduction. I thought that maybe I'd gone on, and then I'm looking at the clothing that, we've got the one guy wearing here. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm completely lost, but it's great to be here.
It happens when Jeremiah and Carlito do not take their medicine.
This episode is going to be big, not because of me, just because people are going to see Jeremiah dressed like this. Because I've never seen you outside of your regular, always looking, to the nines, and so this will be popular because of that. I'm just going along for the ride.
Well, I still have my Stefano Ricci cashmere jacket on with the foulard here, but you're right. It's the first time you see me without the hat and without the white shirt or whatever it is,
and no scarf. Yeah.
You know, Fred, that I've known Jeremiah and Josh. Of course, I knew the father and the grandfather. And I've always liked Jeremiah.
No, he's known my great-great-grandfather, Fred.
But
still back then they told me he was a ball buster.
But let me tell you this. When I opened up the video and I saw this, I had to go like, fuck, is this Jeremiah's like some brother that popped out that we didn't know about? What's going on? I thought that something was going on because, to be honest, our show was history in the making. And to be honest, the fashion world should be shocked today. History in the making.
Seeing Jeremy, this is look, I've always admired the whole scarf thing, because I would do scarves. Between you and Herklotz, you pretty much own the scarf market in the cigar world, so I'm not allowed to wear scarves. But this is definitely something different for you. I think you should stick with it personally.
Yeah, that's what my kids think as well. It's not going to happen.
But anyway, let's get going. Fred, thank you for being on the show. I know I've been asking you this for a while, and you had your reasons, and we respect that, because we wouldn't invite you if we did not believe in what you've done for the industry, what the industry is about, the passion you have, and the support that you have
Bullshit,
always
Jose.
been there.
Bullshit. It's Carlito and I told you he had to come on the show.
Well, I appreciate that.
Fred, you see the show once in a while. I know that. So
yes, of course.
And this is the ball busting part of it that I have to deal with. I just had I had to put in a pacemaker a week ago. They still don't give me a break.
I know, there is zero breaks here.
I know, like Rodney Dangerfield used to do. I don't get any respect. I don't know what's happening here.
Wow.
Anyway, Fred, to do a show with you, to be honest, it would have to be 3 hours, maybe 2 shows or 3, because you have a long career. But I'm going to start off with something very, very easy that we ask all our guests.
Okay.
Do you remember your first premium cigar?
I don't. And this is embarrassing, because I've said this every time on a show that question comes up, is I really just need to make up a really good story. I need to make up a story that I was, fishing and for shark or something off the coast of, Florida or something. I don't know, something. I really don't remember my first one. I remember early on, and it was funny. And then I'm not just saying this because on the show, but I remember, Fuentes early on. And when I found the short ones, short stories and some other, the smaller format, I loved them, because it was the idea of having a full cigar experience smoke in an abbreviated amount of time was a big deal to me. But I really don't remember the first cigar. I've smoked cigars for so long. We can all look back at moments where you had a cigar on a beach or something, and that was amazing, or someplace else. But I really don't remember my first premium cigar. And like I said, I have to make up a good story here sometime.
I know. Fred, that you had the privilege to spend a lot of time with a person that's not with us, a person that, how would you say, gave so much to the industry, traveled worldwide, was recognized. And I'm not saying because he's not with us or he was a friend of ours, but a man that will be remembered for ages and ages, which was Avo. Mm-hmm. You would spend 2 or 3 times a week when you weren't traveling with Avo. Tell us a little bbit about that friendship that you had with that legendary icon, Avo Avuzian.
Yeah, Avo, we met right around 2000, 2001, long before I was actually in cigars. I mean, I smoked cigars. And he was always a people person. And I remember when, I sat down at Corona in Florida, and I was at a different table, and Avo just kind of introduced himself, and he said, "Come on to the table, let's talk." And I had the privilege of being able to smoke with him, 2-3 times a week, all the way until he passed away. He was pivotal in me getting into the industry. He would start bugging about 5 years into it. He'd say, "Well, when are you going to start a cigar company?" And, I'm looking at the humidor full of cigars, and like, well, the last thing we need is another cigar company in this world. And he just kind of, but what was interesting is that he always had stories, but he wasn't into politics. He wasn't into sports. He was really into life and books, and he was very much a people person. I can't imagine a guy that was basically, 7 languages, pretty much fluent, and then a couple of other he could get by on. The ability to speak with that passion in someone's native tongue must have been a big deal. So I at one point had really, Avo had all these stories, and I wanted to share the stories with everybody. So I actually hired a writer that was going to sit down with Avo and basically just have him tell her stories, and then she could turn that into a book. And he was doing part of it, and he always wanted a book, but then he never really did it, and it was this weird thing. So when he passed away, a couple of the magazines had reached out to me about writing something, and there was this moment in the morning where I kind of knew before the rest of the world did. I found out very early in the morning, and the way I ended the article is I realized that I was always upset that he never finished that book. And then I realized at the end of it, and which I had at the end of the article is that, you know what? I think he got the upper hand on me because the stories were never meant to be in a book. They were meant to be shared over cigars. And he was just an amazing man that just looked at life, a great ambassador for the cigar industry. And I was very, very fortunate that he, got me started, and very fortunate that he was a close friend.
I think I've told you this story. It's my favorite story when people ask me, did you know Avo? And I said, well, I knew him very well. So I was doing his 80th anniversary. He invites me to Centro Español to do the honors that day. So I arrive, and he was in the line, and he goes up to me, gives me a hug, and I whisper in his ear, Avo, congratulations on your 80th birthday. But still till this day, the best cigar that Hanky has ever made for you is the Avo 22, and he smiles. And behind me was Hanky, and Hanky shouts out, I know what you told Avo, that the best cigar that I've ever made for him is the Avo 22. Why do you say that? And Avo very graciously turned around and said to Hanky, but Hanky, it is true. And everybody bursted.
That's great.
He's one of those people, every time somebody dies, people say he was a good man, but not only was he a good man, but like you said, he was good for the industry, and we miss him every day.
The very interesting thing you're measured by, when you passed away, the very interesting thing is the day that everybody found out, there were stories about the man before there were stories about the cigars and the cigar person. So he was a person that was close to people as a man, not as necessarily a big cigar maker or having all these blends or all that stuff he did on the cigar side. He was first and foremost, everybody had a story about Avo, the person. And I think that says a lot. That says a lot, the connections that he made.
Definitely. Fred, in 2002, you started with Nomad Cigars.
2012.
2012, yes.
Yep.
2012, 2018. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, it really was just, it was Avo dragging me down to the DR and introducing me to a bunch of people and tobacco and kind of going around. And I honestly, I just felt like the kid in the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I'm down there and I'm in a field, and I, do the obligatory picture in a field and stuff. And so we started playing around tobacco, and I have very much a cooking background. So I approached blending like that. In the beginning, obviously, you don't know anything. So in some ways, I think it was easier when you didn't know anything, because you just go, well, I want to try this tobacco. You don't have ideas of farms and different ways of fermenting and how aged it is or not aged it is. So I just started playing, and I kind of created a brand just for me, and it took off. So then I did several other blends in the DR. Then I went over to Nicaragua. I did a small LE out of what basically was a fact-finding mission. And then I ended up doing cigars with AJ Fernandez. I did about 8 blends out of his factory. If I was still in the business and still had Nomad, I would have run an ad that says, I got to do cigars with AJ before it was cool, because everybody, is able to work with them now. But back then there was only a couple outsiders at the time. And so the brand built, and the only issue I had, and I wasn't looking to sell, there were 2 things that happened simultaneously. One was the big FDA bomb. And, this was a business for me that I was very passionate about. And when the FDA thing hit, the idea of not creating new cigars or being able to hand somebody a cigar shop, and just say, hey, try this and things like that. It was sucking the fun out of it for me. All the things that I loved about the industry. And I wasn't necessarily worried about the initial first pass at it. I'd talked to my attorneys, and we'd all had made our guess on what it would take to to be in the business and pass all their, go through their hoops. My concern is that if the regulation came, what would it be going forward? What would be the next wave of changes they would want? I could probably survive the first wave. I was gonna have to trim down a little bit of the portfolio. By then, I had, I think, just over 40 different SKUs. I had 18 blends, so I'd probably cut out a few. But it would still cost $500,000 to $1 million to stay in business. But if I made it to the other side, there would only be so many cigar companies that really did. But I was worried about what the next wave was. And I realized that, it was getting to be less fun. When you're having to talk to attorneys every week, and this, and the stuff that wasn't fun about the industry, the events and doing seminars or whatever it may have been, it was sucking the fun out of it for me. So I thought, well, you know what? Someone wants it. It's in good hands. I'll go back to just being a cigar smoker. And I'm totally okay with that. I love cigars and I love the people. I knew I would do something else at some point, and obviously I did. But then I had that window of about 2.5 years that I had to figure out who am I.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know about that worries of that famous date of August 8th of 2016. Mm-hmm. But let me ask you this, Fred. Like I said, with you, we really need a lot of time. But you also have written 3 books. The first 2 I didn't, but I know that you gave Emma a copy of for the bacon one. But tell us a little bit about, because I love bacon now. That's something I really have to cut down on. So I could probably only have it once in a blue moon.
Well, the book, the
no
last
more
book
bacon, buddy.
That's right. Yeah.
You got to cut down on the portico. The chicharrones, keep them in the kitchen.
I know.
Definitely.
And I've been hearing that Lourdes has been keeping you away from the kitchen.
Oh, I've already lost 8 pounds.
Wow.
So somebody's gonna be happy.
Good for you.
Yep. So Fred, tell us a little bit about the books.
So the first book was financial. And that was really, I had written it mostly for college students or people coming out of high school and college that, there are 2 things they don't teach you in school. They don't teach you about money and they don't teach you about relationships.
Smoke cigars.
Well, they don't. Well, okay, 3 things. But they don't teach you about money.
They don't teach you how to be polite.
Yeah.
They don't teach you manners. They don't teach you how to get on with this life. They don't teach you how to treat women properly.
Okay, a whole lot of things they don't teach you in school. But the 2 big ones were money and relationships. And I thought, well, I'm not going to teach anybody about relationships. But I did know about money. And so I wrote a book on that. And then I basically donated a bunch of different colleges and it was turned into some curriculum stuff. And then I went and, spoke for some of that. The second book was on marketing, which is my wife and I own a marketing company we have for almost 20 years now. And the third book was actually just for me. There was a stint where I did stand-up comedy back in the 80s into 90s. And I always missed part of that. And so if anybody has read my Facebook posts or Twitter, it's usually just ramblings about stupid stuff. And so I just put that into a book, and I named it So Long and Thanks for All the Bacon, which is really a knockoff of Hitchhiker's Guide with the dolphin, So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. So it's really just pointless ramblings for me about a variety of subjects, whether it's IKEA, Swedish meatballs, the McRib sandwich, bacon. Some people think it's a recipe book and then they get pissed off that it's not a recipe book for bacon. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. But most people are pretty happy with it. And then I did the audio book, which actually I think is more interesting to hear an audio book by the author that actually wrote it, because there's all these subtle, tonality things that come in when they're reading their own book. And I got that idea from Steve Martin because Steve Martin did his own audio book. And I just think it's, I'd already read the book, but it's just so much more when you can hear somebody tell the story. And it's like, look, it's like both of you. It's like Carlito, it's one thing to read their words. It's another thing to hear them from them directly, because there's all the passionate or whatever comes along with that. So the third book was So Long, Thanks for All the Bacon. And that was just some senseless ramblings. And about every 3 years, I say, I'm never going to do another book. And then about 3 years later, I start thinking about writing a book and what it would be. So it was just fun.
Oh, yeah. Because we've known each other for a long time. And on Facebook, we see all these things that you write about bacon and eating. and these things. But you know what it is, Fred? You do it with humor. You do it with grace. If somebody gets offended, it's like 1 in 1,000 because there's always an asshole. Remember years ago, there was this guy on Facebook that every morning would say, "Good morning, America. How thou have we offended you today?"
Right.
Because people get offended at everything today. So, you know, your sense of humor and respect to others. I mean, I think it's gotten you the position that you have, the admiration and the respect, not only from your colleagues of media, but also with manufacturers. Let me ask you this. Right now, you are working with one of my favorite people in the industry. We've had him on our show.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a mad scientist, like Carlito. He's a mad scientist, like Ernie. He's probably one of the most unique person in the industry, which is Dion. Mm-hmm. And when I heard it, I really liked it because I really like Dion. I think people like Dion add value to our industry. He has never been about quantity. He's always been about quality. Dion announces something today, and probably it'll take him 2 or 2.5 years till it's not where he thinks it's at. He will not release. Tell us a little bit about working with Dion.
Yeah, that was interesting. I've known Dion for a while, and everybody that knows Dion, you know, he's a pretty not inner circle thing, but more so just he's a very private person that way. He doesn't you know, the whole not industry standard is very true of Dion. Dion's all about the tobacco, and so when I had sold Nomad, I have to be honest. I mean, there were some very nice phone calls from different companies, but to be honest, there was a very short list of companies that I was willing to work with. I didn't need to work in it. I didn't need the money to, you know, have to take it for a job, if you will. So there was a very short list of brands that I liked, both their cigars and I liked the company as how it was and their philosophy and how it was run. And Dion was honestly, you know, pretty much top of the list or one of the top lists. And we had talked for years about doing something together. And last year, almost at this time when I was a DR at Pro Cigar, he called me and he's like, "All right, I know what we need to do together." And I'm like, "I'm in. I'm definitely in." And so, you know, the tobacco geek part of me, you know, the enthusiast was just like, you know, this is going to be neat. And so the first time when I went down to Nicaragua with Dion to watch him work, I've never seen anybody, you know, or very few, I should say, are so attention to detail to every phase of the production. And I know that gets thrown around a lot. I know people that like to say, you know, "Oh yeah, I oversee this and oversee that, and you know, I rejected this." And I got to tell you, most of it's bullshit. You know, I mean, 80% of this business is marketing, and a lot of these guys' cases. And look, some of them are very good at it. They're very good at telling the story. But you know, Dion would go into just the Polones, the tobacco that's just about ready or almost ready, and we'd be in there for 5 hours. And he's just smoking some of this, smoking some of that, and he'd write notes of what lots he wants. And he'll so then when the tobacco's ready, he'll literally be down there about every 6 or 7 weeks, not during COVID, but on a normal routine. He's down there probably every about 7 or 8 weeks. And he tastes all the tobacco before it's about to be rolled. And he's like, "Okay, you know what? This is great. Go ahead and roll the Rothschilds this week, or go ahead and roll the, you know, MJ12s or the Fume de Amor or whatever it is. You know what? I don't like this tobacco. This didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to, or the way it should. No, we're not going to do these cigars this week." And so you're right. He's not. It's not about production and hitting numbers. It's about his palate and what it is. Now, I also say, and Dion probably hates this, but his greatest asset is his palate. He probably has the best palate for a white guy I know. Meaning he's not Cuban. He's not Nicaraguan. He's not. You know, he comes very much from Hankey's school as far as how he approaches the flavors. I also think it's somewhat of his greatest liability because he also will reject something and he'll say, "Oh, this doesn't taste right." And you're like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And he's like, "Well, we need to get rid of them." And if by getting rid of them, you mean let's move them all to my house and I'll smoke them? Okay. But you know, it's just what he is. He is literally unssacrificing on what he wants out of a blend. And he won't cut corners. And like I said, I know this is cliche and I know it's thrown around, but to watch him work, I mean, we got down there and we got off the plane. And by the time we got to the factory, it was probably about 4:00. We just started right out of the gate, 2 hours. Every single cigar on the line was on the table. And we had to smoke through every one of them. We didn't get them through all that night. We came back the next day. It took 3 days to do that. plus work on new blends, plus you get an idea and grab something, find some tobacco we liked, you'd start playing with it, roll it up, and we'd smoke it. So it's been interesting to really watch. My whole thing with Dion, and I've known him for a long time, I get that you don't want to be industry standard. You don't like doing events conceptually. You don't like swag conceptually, but you have to find more ways for people to discover your cigar. Illusione has always been if you know, you know. If you talk to any rep, you talk to any reviewer of any significance and stuff like that, it is a go-to top 5 brand for them, no doubt, no question. If you talk to any rep, there's probably some sitting in their little suitcase they came in and they handed out their own cigars. And so it was a matter of getting it out of the shadows a little bit, because there's a lot more cigars from when he started. He started in 2005, the brand, I think. So there's just a lot more on there. So the whole rebranding, repackaging. Nothing's going to change in the blends. There's no way you'd ever convince them to change a blend. But it's been a neat experience. It's been a lot of fun.
The thing about that, and like I said in the beginning, I've always had a lot of respect. I've tried his stuff. I love his stuff. He makes good stuff. And to be honest, it's people like him that we need. People that come in and are really going to go the whole 9 yards with the quality, with the consistency, and being honest. With Dion, there's no BS at all. Let me ask you this. Since you started in the business as a manufacturer, as a media person, but also as a consumer, and I think I've never asked this question to anybody, tell me 3 things since you started smoking in the 90s, that's 30 plus years, that you would say it would never happen. 3 things you saw in the industry that you would say you never thought would happen.
Okay. Wow. That's a great question. I never thought there.
I don't know what the fuck they did to you during that operation, bro, but I didn't know they did like some surgery on your brain and got you like at a high level, but you are rock and rolling, man. He looks 20 years younger. He's thinking like a 30-year-old.
I really thought coming off the hospital thing, this would be a bunch of softball questions. You don't miss a beat.
How could he miss a beat? There's a machine going boom, boom, boom.
So 3 things I didn't think would necessarily happen. Well, one, obviously, no one had seen the implications of what online would be. Social media, the chats online, people like Dojo and things like that really brought everybody together, even pre-COVID. Brought everybody together online in a format. I was the first person to put Twitter on the outside of the ban, which really was an accident of a conversation I had with somebody that looked me up on Twitter. But back then, the idea of online and chatting online and posting online and having conversations, just it wasn't a thing. So I don't think anybody could have really seen that coming. I didn't think that there would be as many brands as there were. There's just so many brands out there, and you go to the show, like even this last year, and all these new brands keep popping up, and they find an audience, they find a voice. So I didn't think there'd be as many brands across the board as there was, and I probably didn't foresee anything with the FDA really picking on cigars. If I was to just pick 3 off the top of my head. Now, I'm sure tonight at 2 a.m, I'll wake up in the morning and go, oh, I should have said that. But those 3 come to mind right out of the gate. I don't think, back in the 90s, if I was to pick another one and add a 4th, the processes now, as far as tobacco, look, the process has been the process for 100 years, but I think you have to go out of your way in a way to make a bad cigar. Now, there are certainly cigars that are better. There are certainly cigars that I think have better tobacco, better processes. But, in the 90s, when I started, it wasn't uncommon to have a cigar going, this cigar is not very good compared to other ones. Now that's a lot harder if you're dealing with a shop that knows what to put in the shop. You can smoke a lot of cigars and say, well, you know what, this one may not be in your wheelhouse, but is it a bad cigar? So there's never been a better time to be a cigar smoker, which is the challenge that manufacturers have now because there's a lot of competition out there.
Definitely. It's interesting that you bring that up because the next question is that you're kind of like me. You smoke everything. Mm-hmm. You don't like anybody to say, well, this is good. Well, I really want to know how good it is. The difference is that I could probably mooch it off. I don't know if you have to buy them because I can get them. But would you say that in the last year, and we never mention names, you've seen shortcuts like cigars not burning correctly, doesn't taste the same, it's tunneling, it's canoeing, it's sign burning, tight draw, loose draws, what we call in the industry, cutting corners. You've seen that a lot, right?
Yeah, I've actually, surprisingly to me, I've seen it. I've seen it on construction, obviously, and I think that there's a lot to be said for depending on what factory you're at. Look, COVID's definitely put a problem on different countries as far as staffing and newer rollers and some of that turnover. But I've also seen it on the tobacco. I've also seen, I've seen a lot of the tobaccos start to slip a little bit. What used to be someone putting out something in a B+ grade or something like that, kind of cutting corners for bottom line and trying to get dollars out of there. Look, Coop asked me years ago, the definition of boutique. And to this day, I still believe is that the moment that you make a decision on a blend based on the bottom line profits and not putting out the best cigar you can with what you're working with, then I think you're no longer boutique. I think it's a mentality more than it is a specific number that you're putting out. But yeah, I have seen some of that. And we've seen a big consolidation of how hard it is to get tobacco. And if you're a new company right now and you haven't, kind of hitched your wagon to someone that can consistently get that tobacco, you're starting to see more inconsistencies. And you're starting to see the market accept that a little bit more, which surprises me.
True. Fred, you, one way or the other, are very involved when it comes to media. We ask a lot of people, I get invited as guests on shows. Would you say, in your opinion, that we have too much media? Would you say that we have too much media in the way that we have a lot of people that have never been to a factory, that have never been to a farm, that have never seen the process, and are out there giving out so much, I'm not going to say disinformation, but are not bringing out the facts? How do you feel about that?
I don't know if we have too much media. I think the people that don't have the facts or are off base a little bit, I think they go away. I don't see a lot of them stick around very long. The ones that are earnest tend to rise to the top, and I wouldn't say there's too much media. I will say I'd agree with you that there's a lot out there. I mean, the number of shows that you're invited on, the number of shows that I get an invite on, I'm like, I've never even heard of your show. But they all find a follower. There's the whole aspect of influencers, which is a whole other animal, that comes across there that I try to wrap my head around sometimes. But we tend to always, amongst ourselves, we tend to talk about the same, 6 to 8 people that are out there doing it right and doing a great job. And there's a difference between being media and covering cigars and doing interviews that are in depth, and there's just some guy that got a podcast that wants to talk about cigars. So those are two different levels. There's a lot of guys that go, hey, I have a cigar show, and here's what we're smoking and we're drinking this today, and it's very surface level, and those are the ones that I find that have misinformation. But there's less than 12, I'd say, good shows where that people are really treating it like a business. And those are the ones that I tend to gravitate towards.
It's funny because I baptize, I'm not going to mention the names, but I tell them the Dirty Dozen. Sometimes I tell them the 10, the top 10 of the Big 10, because it's funny. I always tell this story, and I'm not going to mention who it was. It was in his beginnings, but it was about 2 years ago. And I saw on Twitter, I don't know if you saw that, it says, I'm smoking this cigar, and it has an amazing Ligero seed on it. And I read this, and I DM'd him, and I said, Ligero is a primey. And then he said, but so-and-so, you remember that one? And he said, but so-and-so told me that. And I said, so-and-so is an idiot. And if you want to follow in the steps of an idiot, call me after whatever you're doing, and I'll give you a little one-on-one on priming and things like that. So
Yeah.
everybody who was reading that follows me on Twitter says like, I don't think this is right. And then I told the guy, delete the tweet. How can you say the ligero's a seed? I mean, that's why I bring up all these people that just want to repeat and talk about things. And what they do is they confuse the consumers. They do not educate.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the hot button is always, I always see is this plume or is it mold? Let me tell you right now, if you're watching the show and you don't know, 99.9% of the time, it's mold. Okay. I mean, that's just what it is. Plume is such a rare occurrence in our world. And I think it's because everybody wants their cigars to be okay. But yeah, the misinformation out there is amazing. And look, we all can say something wrong. We all can, but if you don't know the answer to something and you're running a show or don't know the answer, don't make something up. Just say, it's a great question. I'm gonna find out. There's no shame in not knowing. You're never gonna know. I could spend the rest of my life in DR or Nicaragua and never have all the answers. It's just the way it is. So I like, I took, when I had Nomad, I wanted to create an educational experience similar to what you had done on your seminars, where you had the different wrappers. And I did it differently, where I had, I took apart all the components and we smoked each of the components separately so you could see the flavors and go, well, why, what does that taste like? Why would you have this in a cigar? And then we would finish on the cigar, the final cigar, with all the tobaccos in it so they could taste and go, okay, I see why this is in here, why you would add this. And so more of that would be great. More educational things for consumers that's teaching them the right things. But yeah, I mean, look, there's always going to be some people out there that have misinformation. Always people, pushing something that's, not a big deal or just outright wrong. And it happens, but I don't think, to your point and what happened with your story is it doesn't stay there long.
Jeremiah, do we have Melanie around? You're on mute.
Yeah, I think there's a reason I put myself on mute there, but we don't have Melanie on, but I got somebody else who wants to say hello.
Oh no, I'm leaving. Fuck.
Hey Fred, how you doing, brother? Good to see you.
How you doing? Nice to see
Good.
you.
Good. Listen, you have a voice. It's nice to hear you talk. Thinking back, honestly, one of my favorite of all-time interviews ever that has taken place in my life. And I'm so grateful to the Professor Jose that tell me, man, you got to find time. You got to do this interview. Fred is amazing and everything. And I go back and watch it over and over. We play it at the Chateau with visitors and everything. It's just, it really, you had this magic way of really reaching deep inside of me. And for me, they're really pouring out my emotions and what I really feel, what I really believe in. And I'm just so proud and happy that took place. And now is documented for someday my children, hopefully great-grandchildren, and the rest of, generations to follow to be able to see. So I just want to say, it's amazing. You got a voice. I could hear you speak. You didn't speak much that day. I was hoping that you would speak more and save me a little,
I was glad I didn't have to. I got to tell you, you were the only person of everybody that I was going to sit down with. And for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, during that 2 years when I wasn't working at the brand or anything, I wanted to do something to give back to the consumers. And so I had the idea of doing these sit down interviews that had no agenda. It wasn't like being on a Zoom call where here's my latest cigar, or here's what we're pushing this week, and just see if we could pull off an intimate conversation. And Carlito, we originally were going to do the factory. Then you wanted to do it up in Banal, which was great. And I got to tell you, it was the only one I was nervous in because I had no idea what to expect. I went online to try to find you in other interviews, and there weren't a lot out there. No. Jose had already warned me about that, and Ciro had said that. And so the ones that I found you in, you would always answer the questions, but I know your mind and you're always like thinking something. So you can't be in a situation without thinking 5 other things. Someone walks by and you're thinking, oh, I got to talk to them or whatever. So you would always answer their questions, but half of you was always like elsewhere kind of looking, very respectful to whoever it was. And so I thought, okay, I have to mentally prepare that when we're sitting down there, he may be completely distracted with Ciro walking by or somebody going on. And I got to tell you, you were 100%. We're 2 feet away from each other, smoking cigars, and you were 100% there. And I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I you know, the comments I get right now of that, it set the tone for the entire series of it. And it was my honor. It's funny because you gave me some cigars that I didn't realize weren't out there. So the next night, you know, afterwards, I was with a friend of mine, Christian. And we're smoking. I gave him one, and we're smoking them. And the next night, I'm smoking one, and the third night, I think I'm smoking. I've got 2 left. I'm smoking it, and Christian's like, "You realize that cigar is not out there, right? You probably should hold on to it." I'm like, "Oh, great!" But it was
enjoyed. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was, but it was a great experience. I'm glad it worked out. And Ciro just told me, I saw Ciro last week, and he told me it was playing up in Banao, and I'm like, I'm honored that it did that. And it was fun, and it was. I think it did what I'd hoped it would do, is for people to see it. You know, people see the people. They're these, obviously you're an icon, and people see that. But I wanted to show, you know, they're real people too. They have the same emotions. They have the same things that everybody else does with. And so it was an honor. It was a lot of fun. You made it easy. You really made it easy.
No, absolutely. If I remember, no, it wasn't that easy. I was very nervous and so forth. And I know that you made a big sacrifice and everything to take that afternoon, the day out. You spent the morning visiting the foundation with me, which probably was not planned. And I realized that because you came for an interview. Yet I think we spent 6 hours before I was ready to sit down. And I kept postponing, not really anxious to sit down with you, you know, in a sense, because I didn't know what was going to happen. But if I remember correctly, I think you asked one question, and it just started from there, and I think I just went on for hours or an hour and a half and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, we talked
very few interruptions from you.
Yeah,
very few questions.
I mean, we went an hour, and I would just prompt the questions, and you had stories. But it was just one of those rare occurrences where, like, everything else just disappeared. You know, I mean, the cameras there. I mean, there's 3 cameras there. There's, you know, I don't know how many people walking around, and it was just this window of getting to know you and share that with everybody else. And that was something very special.
Well, I'm gonna confess something. I wasn't looking at the cameras. I kept looking at my grandfather's photo on the wall, his portrait, my father's, the family's, and asking for inspiration and to see what words they would take out of my heart and soul. And I think that magic took place that day.
Yeah, no doubt. I was just honored to be a part of it, and something that will be up there for everybody to see going forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Fred.
Carlito, listen, great to see you.
Of course, I'll say good to see you. I wasn't sure I was going to see you, but I'm glad I'm still seeing you.
Can you believe this guy? He's out of the hospital, and he's not missing a beat.
Carlito, listen to this.
See, he's already asking me when is dinner, when we're going to have dinner.
No.
I just came back from 4 weeks nonstop trips, events, and everything.
Carlito, this is what happens to a person when he doesn't take the medicine. Have you seen how the fuck Jeremiah looks?
No. Let me tell you something. The only thing I'm very, very disappointed when you mention Mooch and you're talking about cigars and everything, how Jeremiah, without me being visually seen, only listening, he didn't come right at the jugular vein. That was his chance to come in. Like, you're mooching and everything, telling me, you're leaving back, you're going back home, your cigars, so they're already all set aside, all your cigars. You don't stop, and now you're after Fred and Dion. My God. What's that?
Carlito, we'll talk later on. Fred, let me ask you this.
Jose, that's only if he picks up the phone. And usually,
You know, it's funny. I've said it publicly. I've said it privately. Carlito, for almost close to 35 years, has always been very, very good to me.
Yeah, and it's weird because everybody wonders why.
You don't want to know why. Déjalo ahí.
Wait. For everybody listening and those who are listening for the first time, it's called Busting Balls, and it's the game of life. And you only do that with people you respect and you love, and they are capable of busting them back. And each of you love each other more each day, and that's the relationship we all have. That's
true. Fred, let me ask you this. You have always, whether you were in the industry or not in the industry, be a big supporter of the PCA. I saw you last year. I saw you the year before. I think it was the best show in the last 5 years. But what else would you like to see as a consumer? No. As a media person.
Fred,
Well-
I have a question for you before you answer that.
Okay.
How does it feel to meet someone who speaks more than you?
Yeah, I know, right? I know I talk too much. This is crazy. I mean, yeah, you're right. We don't have enough.
Your match with Jose, man. He's
Yeah.
like, I'm listening to the show and I'm thinking, you know what? This is weird. We invite people on the show to hear from them. We don't give them a chance to speak.
I'm not a media guy. I just in an off idea of giving back, I sat down with some very big people and got to share their stories. So I don't consider myself media. I don't do reviews. I don't, I'm a cigar enthusiast. I love it when someone I know in the industry tells me to try a cigar. I really give it a lot of weight when it's someone that tells me to try a cigar and it's not their own cigar. There's a lot of great cigars out there. I love it when I stumble on a shop and I find cigars that are, no longer available. Look, there's a lot of great cigars that just didn't stay on the shelves for a variety of reasons. That either just, something didn't resonate in the name, the logo, whatever it may have been. So I'm a cigar guy. What I would like to see, and I've actually been making this case for quite some time. And I remember in 2014 at PCA, Pete Johnson and I were in a conference that was with the board stuff. This needs to be looked at, when we were first going into the FDA argument about cigars, we have our doctors, they have their doctors and things like that. You're never going to convince a non-smoker this is not the same as a cigarette. It's smoke. That's the defining line in smoke. And is it different? 100% it's different. It's not even close to the same product. But what this is this is a freedom issue. Okay? I don't care if you go to Krispy Kreme and you eat a dozen donuts every day. That's not my problem. Nobody walks into McDonald's without saying, you know what, I don't really care about the last 5 years of my life. I mean, it's just the way it is. But this is a freedom issue. What do you care that I'm smoking a cigar? If you want to talk about medical and stuff like that, then let's talk about the fact that, one of the leading problems with men is stress. People smoke a cigar, they lose their stress. I have people that I've smoked with for years. I don't know what they do for a living. I don't care what they do for a living. We sit there, we smoke a cigar, we solve the world's problems, and we go home. So I would like us to pivot more on this is an issue of freedom. I have the right to do this. I also, and I got in big trouble several years ago because I did a post about not posting a picture with a cigar in front of a no smoking sign. Now, unbeknownst to me, and I've done it, we've all done it. Unbeknownst to me, the day prior, someone pretty big in the industry had just done that on a college campus. They thought I was shooting at them. I didn't actually know they even did the post. But we have to be respectful of non-smokers' domains if we want them to be respectful of ours. If Starbucks decides that we can't smoke on their patio, that's their right as a business, and we have to honor that. Don't smoke a cigar. Don't go there and go, well, it's my right. If the park doesn't allow it because you get the one cigar smoker that can't go off in the distance and get away from the children and smoke their cigar in peace, but they feel like they've got to smoke it because it's their right. We have to be respectful of each other. And I think that, a lot of our problems would go away if we did that a little bit more. So I'd like to see more of a push of being respectful for non-smokers as much as we are. You guys have been to DR. Fufi created Saga, obviously because Fufi has nothing else to do, but he created Saga for non-smokers as much as he did smokers. He didn't like the fact that him and the guys from Swisher would go into to NOAA and take over NOAA and have all the non-smokers impacted by cigars. So he built an entire restaurant because he could, and it ended up being an amazing restaurant that we all love because you can sit down there and have cigars and have a great experience. But he created it because he's respectful of non-smokers as well.
Yeah, I just wish that smokers would be a little bit more respectful to us, because every time I get a reservation in a hotel, whatever's that, it's non-smoking room. And I don't care what they do. If someone smoked a cigarette in there, I cannot stay in there. You could smell it, and I don't care what they do. They could bring in all the chemicals, and they could bring everything they want, and that smell from a cigarette. I just, and have nothing against people who enjoy cigarettes or enjoy marijuana as it is, which is so popular. You could, you don't smell cigar smoke in New York City or any of the big cities, but you smell marijuana everywhere you walk. I mean, Vegas is, whatever, that's legal. I have nothing against it, but at least give me the same freedom.
I don't get that. How did marijuana, which by the way, I could care less. You want to smoke marijuana, that's fine. How did they position themselves so well? It's just a leaf. They're just smoking. I mean, so why are we all of a sudden so much different compared to them? I don't get it. And you're right. We smell, because we're around tobacco and cigars, we smell all the additives in a cigarette. We smell all the chemicals. We smell all the stuff that they put in there. We don't put things in there to help nicotine absorb to the lung. Matter of fact, we are absent the chemical breakdown to have nicotine absorb as much as cigarettes are. They do it where it sticks to the lungs longer and it dissipates faster, and then you got to get another cigarette. We don't do any of that stuff. Yet sometimes we're the bad guy.
Exactly. And you know what? I would be very much in favor, because I believe that the United States, it's just one country. And we're talking about the United States of America and the Constitution. I'm not going to speak for other countries because I don't have the citizens' right to do that. I would be very pleased and very happy if marijuana is legalized all over, because we go from state to state. And in the same way, leave us alone. Give us an opportunity to enjoy our cigars in a place that is designated for cigar enjoyment, and a place could be regulated with a proper air circulation, all the needs necessary to please everybody. But don't take our freedoms and our rights away.
Well, and I 100%, because I had used it as a case study. So Christian Hudson owns a shop called Just for Him in Springfield, Missouri. And this was years ago. And I always thought he was the test case because the city banned cigar smoking. So here he was in his own cigar shop, in his own lounge. And for a while there, they weren't allowed to smoke. Christian went out to petition, and he went to the non-smokers and said, hey, I know you don't smoke, but do you believe I should have the right to smoke in my shop? And they signed it. He got it, and he got it overturned. They got grandfathered along with, whoever else was. Sure. So that's the battle we should have. It shouldn't be an argument of where is it medically, where is it all this other stuff. It should be in a designated area where we're allowed to smoke. What do you care if I'm smoking cigars? Meanwhile, you can be in California, you can't smoke a cigar in an apartment, but you can light up marijuana. I don't get it. I really don't.
You want to know how bad the hypocrisy is of marijuana with smoking? During COVID in the Netherlands, which I love it, we have my brother who lives there, our brother Sasha lives there. They did not allow smoking in the cigar shops, cigarettes, pipe, or cigars. But guess what? You could buy pot there and smoke it. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, really?
But one thing is, you inhale marijuana to get the effects. It goes into your lungs. You do not inhale a cigar.
Exactly.
The smoke of a cigar is alkaline, whereas the smoke of a cigarette is acidic. It goes into your bloodstream. If you inhale a cigar, your body rejects it. Mm-hmm. Totally different animals.
I know. Remember, I used to work for that industry, so let's leave it at that.
There's another interesting.
You forgot to tell us what it was like in the Netherlands during that period.
I wasn't there. I was with COVID in Macedonia. Fuck you.
Yeah, I was just questioning myself. What industry were you referring to in Netherlands?
Yeah, right.
And what street was your main business?
Why do you think he ended up in the hospital for so long?
That's a horrible visual, Carlito. It really, really is. The other thing I think would be an interesting conversation as far as, consumers and education is, it was actually Hanky that talked to me about it, is that the pressure to maintain blends year over year to be the exact same, we messed up. We should have been like winemakers. Now, Europe is better about this because they'll actually look at vintages and cigars and go, hey, this cigar was this. But the pressure, when we're dealing with elements and we're dealing with different tobacco crops and we're dealing with tobaccos that are no longer available yet, trying to maintain a blend, we really should have positioned ourselves in the industry to be more like winemakers, that no one expects a winemaker to have the exact same wine the next year. Now, we have the ability, because of tobacco, to maintain that a lot longer. And as you run out of a tobacco, you start to tweak the blend. Is it to a point where, the average person can't discern it? Yeah, we definitely can. But, there's a consumer education aspect. The fact that we get it as close as we do year over year, is pretty amazing when you know what goes on behind the scenes to do that. When you're battling Mother Nature, did it rain more or less that year on that crop? Is it, how much of that tobacco is available? How many of those cigars can be made? Whatever it is, the fact that we get it as close as we do on the caliber of something like Fuente and some of the other brands, it's amazing to me.
Without a doubt. I think that our good friend Rich, I think is around, right, Jeremiah?
Well,
Wow, that was the worst segue ever.
all right, let's do this. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Rich's Riot.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Am I heard?
You're heard loud and clear. You ready?
Yeah, great. Well, I've got
Actually, no, you can bring the sound it up because it's a bit weak.
my boss is with me, and I gotta make sure that I don't get too far out here.
Just need
But
to turn the volume up.
I can't. But it's okay. So
All right, we'll do with it, Rich.
I'll
Let's.
talk.
Hello, Brenda. It's
Hi.
nice to see you.
You too, sweetheart.
I'll speak loud and clear.
All right.
this time. It looks like we have a little time. I got these. There she is, smoking as Fred would like a small cigar, and Jeremiah would like because it's a Don Carlos No. 3 with that wonderful wrapper. And talking about respect, Brenda and I both smoke cigars. Me for over 50 years. Brenda getting up there in the number of years she's been smoking cigars, and we always go to places that allow us to smoke. And I remember in Texas, there used to be a nice little Italian place not far from our house, and he would let us smoke on his patio. And we would always go out there and check the wind, see that the smoke wasn't going to be blowing toward other customers or anything, and we'd be smoking and relaxing. And we went there one night, and a couple comes out, and they order a bottle of wine, and all of a sudden they get up and they leave. And I said, what happened? And the waiter says, they didn't like the cigars. I said, wait a minute, they weren't even close to the cigars. And the owner had been taking some food over to a customer who was ill and taking it to his house, and he came in and he said, hey, what happened to that table over there? And the waiter says, they didn't like the cigars. He said, well, then take that damn bottle of wine in the kitchen, we'll use it for cooking. And respect goes lots of different ways. We smoke a lot here in Georgia, and we remember going many nights. We'd go and find a nice corner of the patio away from people, watch the wind direction, and all of a sudden a lady would get up from another table and start walking toward us, and Brenda would kick me under the table and says, here it comes. And 9 times out of 10, the lady would say, you mind if I stand behind you and just smell that? It just reminds me of my grandfather or my father or my uncle. And that's amazing to me that she's a non-smoker and complimenting the aroma of the cigars. Well, that's just terrific. There's neighbors near me that were having some sexual problems. The wife was not able to climax, so they went to a doctor to discuss what the problem was, and the sex therapist says, you know what, it's temperature. You got to make sure that it's a very cool environment. So the guy goes home and he says, we got to try something here. So he gets his neighbor and he says, hey pal, listen to me a favor. My wife and I are going to make love, and I want you to stand next to the bed with a big towel and wave that towel at us to keep a breeze going. And the neighbor says, are you crazy? He says, no, it's okay. My wife understands. And he's waving it down. 20 minutes go by, nothing. So the guy looks at his neighbor and says, wait a minute, change positions. And the neighbor goes, what? He says, get in bed with my wife and I'll wave the towel. And about 2 minutes later, she's screaming and moaning, had the best orgasm she's ever had. And the guy gets up, the guy gets out of the bed and he looks, and his friend says, hey, see, I tell you, that's how you wave a towel.
Brenda, I publicly apologize for this.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh my God.
Oh, goodness. From bad to worse. All right, friends. Thank you very much, Rich.
You're welcome.
Good luck, Brenda.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Fred,
I'm never going to hear the phrase "throw in the towel" again with the same light. I mean,
Oh goodness.
Fred, let me ask you this. You have been going for Pro Cigar for many, many years.
yeah.
Unfortunately, I could only attend the first night because of what happened. How was Pro Cigar this year?
Look, I love it. I've gone, I think, 12 years now. I missed I think the first one, and I think I missed the second one. I love it. I think it's a great event. I think that for any consumer that is looking for that, that bucket list item, that you love the cigars, and maybe you've gone to events in the States, um, the access to manufacturers, I mean, to be right there at the dinner, the tours are amazing, the food's amazing. It is from a Tuesday night to Friday night, and the ultimate experience for a cigar smoker. Not just the number of cigars they get to smoke, but just the factories, what they put on, and what's different about the environment, I think, of Pro Cigar. And I haven't been to Cuba's. I've been to Cuba, but not to their event. Look, the Pro Cigar members get together, and they look. I don't have delusions of grandeur. They don't all love each other. I mean, a lot of them like each other and go to dinner, but they don't. Look, they're competing against each other, and I get that. But their ability to put that aside and represent a country, and put that country first and foremost, and tobacco first and foremost, and their cigars first and foremost, is just a magical experience. It's like being invited to a private party at one of these guys, only there happens to be 800 people there at dinner. It's just a great experience. It really, really is. You could walk up, and the people that you've followed or seen on interviews or seen in ads or seen in articles, you can walk up to them and say hello and ask them a question about a cigar, or ask them a personal question, whatever you want to do. It's just an amazing event, and it's so well run. They start working on it months in advance, and just the tours and logistics of moving that many people, and as good as they do it, and I'm sure behind the scenes they are screaming and yelling and trying to figure stuff out because something's gone awry, and you just don't see it as an attendee. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And I've been to, like I said, I haven't been to Cuba, but I've been to every major event around the nation, and there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it. And whether you choose to, and it's hard to, especially if you only go once, it's hard to decide which tours to pick. I mean, to go up and to go to Banao and see the school, and see what was built there in an area that, quite frankly, never should have been able to grow tobacco, never should have been able to have what they built up there. And yet something magical happened in the middle of nowhere to pull that off, and how in the process of that, how that gave back to Fuente as far as the tobacco that comes out of there, and the schools, and the changing lives. And Pro Cigar is that as well. Pro Cigar is just an entire community coming together for the greater good. Like I said, I'm sure that Friday ends, and Monday morning they're all slugging it out again, trying to sell more cigars than the other guy. But when you understand what you're doing, and you're trying to better a country and a culture, and the people to go along with it, and then as a cigars consumer to see that firsthand, it's an amazing event.
It is.
Fred, I want to take the opportunity again to thank you for being on our show. We had talked many times with you about it, but I guess things happen when they should happen. Thank you for your friendship towards our industry, what you have supported Pro Cigar and the whole world of cigars. I look forward to see you at PCA, God willing. So
Yep.
you could be on the show, brother. Carlito?
Thank you. Thank you. And Jeremiah and I want to have the remote to your pacemaker so we can control that when you're walking by or during conversations. I think, is that something they can give us technology-wise?
I don't want Carlito and Jeremiah to have it. They could screw me up.
Well, thank you for having me. It was an honor to be here.
Carlito?
Before I have words for Fred, I'm just curious. I want to know what happened to Jeremiah's Borsalino. Was it Stefano Ricci's eagle that tore it off his head? Or I don't know where he's at, what part of, or is he in the desert somewhere and a camel chewed it up? But I know that I'm dying to find out what happened to Jeremiah's Borsalino Fendora. But besides that, it was very, very gratifying. I mean, you gave so much information, and I think I'm very grateful that you were able to accept this invitation, Fred. You're an amazing person. You're a dear friend to the whole industry. What you're doing, I wish you the continued best and success. And just know that you have a home and you have a friend that's always open for coffee, a cigar. And there's always more cigars than the one's ever seen before that I'd be more than happy to share with you.
Well, I appreciate that. And, whenever the day comes that I'm willing to retire, I'm just going to move to the DR and I'll just give tours of your factory. I could do that all day long.
Believe me, we could use a lot of help, and we'll be very grateful. Thank you, my brother. All the best.
Thank
and
you.
big hugs all the way from the Dominican Republic.
We'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Fred.
Oh, thank you. I hope you have the hat on next time.
Every time I bump into you, I have a gentleman who some way, somehow, always needles his way back into the industry at some point. And that says a lot about you on many fronts. Says a lot about your love for the industry. Says a lot about your respect for the industry. But it also says a lot about your passion and your friendship and what it is you value. And the industry loves people like you because you bring in a lot of heart. You bring in a lot of energy from the outside and from the inside, and you vehicle it. And you're able to do it with such eloquence because you speak so well, you write so well. Part of it professionally, another part emotionally. And that's something which is extremely valuable to all of us. So thank you, Fred, for that.
Oh, thank you.
And every single time I bump into you, it's a pleasure. I know you're always interested about learning more about what we do about Cameroon.
Yep.
And you do that with everybody. You just sit them down or you start talking and you start picking people's brains and you start mapping it out. It must be very interesting inside that head of yours.
I wouldn't want to be there. I wouldn't recommend it.
Let me tell you something. I do anybody's head except for Jose's.
Fair enough. I agree with you there. That we can agree on.
Anyways, until next time, Fred, I thank you very, very much for accepting our offer, for coming on the show. And I wish you only the best. And I will see you very soon, probably at the PCA at the latest.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
All right, my friends. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, this was an exceptional episode of the Fuente and Meerapfel Meet the Professor. And yes, the first and only one where you're not going to see me in my Stefano Ricci scarf and my grandfather's or great-grandfather's glasses I wear, actually. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took it in. And remember to take care of yourselves and of each other. And if you don't do it with passion, don't do it at all. See you next week, same time, same place. And again, happy birthday this week to Liana Fuente. Bye-bye for now. Thank you, Fred. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Melanie.